Hello, Awesome Soul here, and welcome back to more Robocraft news. This time, we have a lot of news on things that could possibly happen in the future. Both of the main things I will be talking about is very interesting. Especially the first one, and that is custom-made maps. What's this? Of course, though, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So, let's start off with the tweets in order of appearance. Or, well, close enough anyway. To begin, we will be starting with Rick's Twitter. And the well-known community member clearly is asking about the possibility of adding the test map into custom games. I'm personally all for this, although the map itself is a little asymmetrical, so balancing that would be a bit weird as far as spawns go, I guess. But of course, it is just simply a custom games map. I could certainly see it being really good for Pit, especially. But anyways, Rick says, now that wouldn't be too hard to do. We would just need to set up multiple spawn points and placement for bases at a minimum. So yeah, basically all you need to do is just slap down a bunch of spawn points in the base, or what I guess qualifies as the base? I have a general picture in my mind as to what the bases would be, but I assume everyone knows what I'm referring to. But yeah, I think it would be pretty interesting, but only for custom games, because, like I said, balance would be a little weird. Anyways, moving on to the next one. This, my friends, is the very interesting topic of player-made creations. Specifically, like I said earlier, getting player-made maps into the game. So, Mark says, been chatting with Fat Digester, aka Rick the Art Gemmer, and we are thinking, of course the keyword here is thinking, about giving our level assets out and seeing if we can get community maps into custom. And then Rick responds with, yeah, player-created maps for custom games would be awesome, and of course, I definitely agree. Entrants would need to work in Unity 3D and produce clean, optimized assets. So, from what I'm gathering here, it seems like you submit the map to them, they look the map over themselves, and then if they think it's up to their standards, they will then add it to the game. A little later, I believe they do go into a bit more detail on that. I'm pretty sure I have that tweet. Rick continues this idea with the following. Make your own robot factory map, lava map, deserted underground mine map, tropical alien map, asteroid field map. The options are endless. Really, the only limiting factor here is your creativity. We need to iron out details, and again, this is just an idea. Not confirmed, but if it is confirmed, that would be very awesome. So we would need to provide an example scene, and you would need to use Unity and edit the map in Unity Editor. So that's very good. Providing a base example like that would solve a whole lot of problems, I'm sure. And of course, on top of that, it would also make it easier for people to actually get in and use it. Because the Unity Editor is brilliant to use. You will be able to sculpt and paint the terrain, and add low poly objects of your own. And I personally have tinkered around with the Unity Editor before. It is pretty great, and like he says here, it is actually, well, I wouldn't say simple, but it's not as difficult as you might think. When he says sculpting and painting, he literally means sculpting and painting. It is actually fairly similar to actual in-game map editors in various games out there, which I found quite surprising when I first learnt about that. And here Rick says you can use our textures or make your own, import meshes and set up collisions as you wish. Since this isn't actually built into Robocraft, you can, like he says here, add pretty much whatever you want without really any limitations. Of course, there are limitations to Unity itself, but you won't have a pre-built asset pool. You'll have to build up your own asset pool, which of course is going to be a little bit more work. But I guess in a way that's kind of a good thing, because it's going to weed out the low polish maps, I guess you could say. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the random people who just sort of go in and fiddle around with a map editor in various games, and then just like, okay, cool, I'm done. Let me upload this, and it's just like a box on either side of the map. Yeah, we're not going to be seeing any of those, hopefully anyway. Now Rick here elaborates on how exactly the sharing is going to work, at least early on and in the future. Again, if this idea actually follows through. The first player map designs might be driven through our website, just to see how popular it is. And then the workshop would be great in the future though. Of course, he is referring to the Steam workshop. So I think their idea here is pretty good. Like I said before, it's probably the best idea to sort of curate the maps on their own, especially because I'm sure integrating the whole Steam workshop into the game would be quite a bit of work, and I'm sure actually viewing the submitted designs would be a bit easier on them. Unless, of course, they're flooded. But I highly doubt they would be flooded, because it does take a long time to produce a decent looking map. And I'm sure you're gonna have to submit a screenshot with it, so if your map's kinda garbage, they might skip over it. No offense, but like I said, nobody really wants to battle on a flat map with 2 cubes on either side. Shifting over to Mark's side of Twitter, Cluely again asks if we could have a out-of-combat speed boost, either mechanic or module. And Mark responds with a speed boost module is something we can definitely add. Also, the new wheels and foils will be very fast. Of course, he's referring to the aerofoils. Now, I've talked about those two things in previous videos, so I won't go into those. But a speed boost module is something that I have thought about doing a concept video on before, but I think it's a bit too straightforward, I guess you could say. Just like, press the button and the car goes fast. Or the mech goes fast, or the plane goes fast, you get the idea. That's not to say I don't want it, I'm just saying doing a video on it might be a little bit too easy. Like, it would be over in 3 minutes. But yeah, a speed boost module is cool. And it would be good for like a mid-range CPU, sort of like the Window Maker is. Next up, we have the big one. Mark here says, would like to flip balance. So small weapons for small bots, and big weapons for big bots. Could put it to a vote with details of how in a post. So when I first saw this, I was just kind of waking up, and I was a little bit unsure of what the hell was going on, to be honest. But thinking about it more, I think this is just kind of intentionally vague. Probably for a few reasons. One, the Twitter character limit. You can't really express massive ideas on there. And two, I think it would be best if he decided to write out all his ideas in one big section on the website where people can read through all of them, rather than just reading tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet. So yeah, for those worried about this, fret not, because one, this is a little vague, nothing is set in stone here, and two, he is going to talk about it more and put it to a vote. He's not going to do anything without the community's approval. And he gets into that in this line of tweets. Here we have Rafifu saying that it's going to break a lot of bots, really, but it makes sense to them. Mark responds with, yes, that's why I suggest putting it to a community vote. Do not want to force so many robot changes without community support, which definitely is the right way to do it. Somebody suggests just release the update for 1 week and then get feedback. And Mark says, in theory, a beta test could work, I guess, and then yours truly comes out swinging with, what about run it as a brawl? You know, Brawl, the mode that was supposedly going to be updated every second week, but hasn't been touched for quite a while. Don't worry guys though, they are still working on Brawl, they just need to iron out a few things. But anyways, tangent aside, Mark says, yes, I think we could do it as a Brawl. That is a good idea. So, hopefully, we will be seeing this as a Brawl. Either if people like the idea, or they're kind of iffy on the idea. And then they could sort of test it out in action to see if they like it or not. Because of course, things on paper are a lot different from things in action. Raptark here doesn't seem too pleased about this proposed idea, but again, it's a very vague idea, and we're kind of waiting on more information on it. But Mark responds with, you have to admit that forcing large robots to use small weapons and vice versa, as it is at the moment, is a bit of the wrong way round. And part of me says yes, but the other half says no. I guess the other half, though, is really only saying that just because I'm so used to the way we have it now, where, you know, the little weapons are really energy efficient. But the other half of me does agree. Because, for example, if you guys remember the pinpoint mech that I made, it has a lot of the smallest rails on it. So, you know, small bot, small weapons. But unfortunately, the small rails are in a pretty bad place right now. So they're not really all that usable. Now, if I wanted to strap on the large rails, unfortunately, I couldn't do that with the frame. I would need to make the frame a whole lot bigger. But then that kind of ruins the whole character of the bot. It was supposed to be a small mech. So at the very least, if this change makes the weapons more balanced, and it's not just that the biggest weapons are the only good weapons and the small weapons are very niche, then I'm all for the idea. Again though, I do need to hear all what he has to say on it first, before I come up with my opinions on it. Another thing though, he's really hammering at home that this is going to be tested and thought out and community verified. Because in the past, they've sort of pushed out a few things, but it seems like they're coming around to listening to the community a lot more. I mean, they have listened to the community a fair bit in the past, but it seems now, especially with custom games, they're really embracing the community. It's like a whole community revolution, I guess you could say. I definitely do like this approach they're taking now, so hopefully they stay on that track. So Mark responds to somebody with a balance question with, agreed. It's not as straightforward as it seems. Mustn't rush. I first must gauge the appetite for it though. And that's what I like to hear. He's not rushing it. Now, in a way, I'm still a little confused as to what exactly this is going to solve and how it's going to work. Again, I really need more information. But Mark says here, would have fast, small robots with small, referring to the weapons, high DPS, high power consumption weapons, and vice versa. FNN, which is referring to the Fast and Furious update, would still apply, but the other way around. So it's kind of interesting. I guess the high DPS thing is really the only thing differentiating it, because you can still build a fairly small bot and slap on the larger weapons. Of course, I'm referring to things like the epic laser, not like the super massive weapons. Now, it's not super high fire rate like the smallest laser, but it does actually deal more damage. It's just not as energy efficient. So again, I really need more information. I'm still kind of confused by all what's going on here. But yeah, Mark, if you're listening, sooner rather than later, I would like to get more information. And I'm sure the community would like to know that as well after this fairly lengthy string of tweets. Anyways, that's it as far as that line of tweets goes, but there is one more that is also fairly interesting. And this is from somebody wondering if you could have smaller CPU modules. And Mark actually does agree here. He says there is a lot of scope for modules akin to the type you suggested. Most any spell, for those who've been sticking around with Robocraft, you know Mark has a tendency to use words like spells and mana when referring to the power system or modules. But anyways, most any spells you can think of can be represented as a module. So that definitely confirms we're going to be seeing a ton of modules in the future, possibly every module. Dun dun dun. But anyway, the reason that I do highlight this one is because, spoiler alert, for those who do enjoy my concept videos, I've actually had a mini module concept in the works for a little while, in which I would go through and make a smaller version of all existing modules. But the idea now has been brought up to Mark. At least one variant of a module, while of course I'll be doing a variant of every single module. But the question I pose to you guys, now that Mark has this idea in his head from somebody on Twitter, would you think it's a good idea to even bother with the video, since the idea is kind of out there? Or is it still kind of my own thing because I'm doing it for every module and putting my own take on it? Or what? I don't know. Feedback down below would be very much appreciated. Anyways, that will do it for today's video. I, of course, have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.